So I think that's it from me in terms of plans for the rest of the day, which I said I will repeat. But I'm now going to hand over to Ilaria Geddes from the Marmot review team to really get us off to a great start today. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone, and thank to the SWF Forum for inviting me here today. Very pleased to be here in a place where health inequalities are particularly low, at least in comparison to the national average. There is, if you value 1 year of life, the difference in life expectancy here for the Devon PCT is 5 years for males. And that is significantly low in comparison to the median. So well done to Devon, but still it's 5 years of difference between those living in the poorest neighborhoods in Devon and those living in the richest neighborhoods. So still a lot of work to do everywhere in the country and here as well. I worked with the Marmot review team since we started the review of health inequalities in England back in November of 2008. We published our report, Fair Society, Healthy Lives, in February this year, and things have changed quite a lot politically since. And I'll speak a little bit about that towards the end. What I'll do today is I'll go through our key findings and I'll show you some of the evidence on the relationship between social determinants, social aspects of life, society, and health outcomes. We were asked to review the evidence as part of our work, and we were also asked to review the evidence for interventions to reduce health inequalities. I haven't got much of that in there, but I'm very happy to speak about that and answer questions about interventions and what works in reducing health inequalities, if you have any questions on that towards the end. Now, this is what I consider the picture of health inequalities in England nowadays. What you're looking at is, you're looking at the top line, and that is the gap in life expectancy between those living in the poorest neighborhoods in England and those living in the richest neighborhoods. It is quite a fine detail. Each one of those dots represents a neighborhood in England. So this is spatial, it relates to where you live, not specifically your socio-economic status. There is a 7-year life expectancy gap in England. What is perhaps more interesting is the bottom line, which is a disability-free life expectancy. And what that means is the time you spend without a disability or in ill health. That is actually 17 years disability-free life expectancy gap. What that means is not just that people in the most deprived neighborhoods live shorter lives, but they also spend a lot longer of their lives with a disability or in ill health. The big dark green line in the middle is the pension age, the predicted pension age increase. Now this might change. But as you can see from that graph, you realize that by pension age, the great majority of the population will be suffering from some form of disability or ill health. That might not stop you from working completely, but this is based on census data, it's based on self-reported ill health. What that is a form of disability or ill health that is stopping you from fully living your daily life, from being able to carry out fully your daily activities. So that is extremely important in political terms. If we want to solve the pension crisis, we need to address health inequalities because we basically trading off pensions for ill health or disability benefits if we do not address health inequalities. In an aging society, I think that is also very important for what we do with the built environment and accessibility. That again shows you that because of health inequalities, the great majority of the population might have mobility problems by pension age. Our key themes, our key findings. Well, we believe that reducing health inequalities is a matter of fairness and social justice. And we believe that action to decrease health inequalities needs to be through what we call proportionate universalism. We have been targeting a lot of resources on the 10% most deprived of the population over the past 10, 12 years, and things have not improved much. And we believe that is it fair to target just the 10% most deprived of the population? What's going to happen to the next 10% and the following 10%? There is also an issue with the fact that health is socially graded. It's not just about the bottom and the top of society, but it runs across the whole of society. So, as I say, that is quite finely graded. It's almost a linear relationship between wealth and health. Just to explain the concept of proportionate universalism in a little more detail, which I just think is a very important concept. Can you hear me? I'll try and shout. Well, thank you. So what we really mean by proportionate universalism is that we want actions that are universal, that address everybody's health, but that actions that are more intense, the farther down you go, down the gradient, essentially. And the way I try and explain it is, if you think about the length of this green line as the intensity of the action, that is what we mean by proportionate universalism. So there should be action across all that gradient, but more intense at the bottom of the gradient, that being wealth and that being life expectancy. So we call this leveling up, essentially. It's about improving everybody's health, but more so at the bottom. So, we believe that we need action across all the social determinants of health. Life is complex and there are many things that impact on your health. Early years, education, work, employment, aging, the place where you live. Health inequalities are determined by social inequalities. We know this from previous evidence on global inequalities, previous evidence in England and the UK. Your health is determined by the place where you're born, where you grow up, where you work, where you live, and where you age. So it's about reducing social inequalities. In order to reduce health inequalities, we need to reduce social inequalities. We think that reducing health inequalities is vital for the economy. We've calculated the cost of inaction to be over 50 billion. That is in welfare payments, lost tax revenue, increased healthcare costs, and lost productivity. It is important for the economy, but we also think that we need to move on from a concept where economic growth is not the most important aim of society. It is not the most important measure of success for a country, a government and society we need to move towards a concept where well-being and health are included as important social goals. And we need to engage with communities and deliver a reduction in health inequalities through participatory decision making. Now, this is our conceptual framework, and as you can see from the policy objectives, it is a matter of addressing all those key social determinants, from early life to communities and the environment, to straightforward public health and ill health prevention. So it links back to addressing all those key determinants. It's not just about action around the social determinants, but it's about action through the life course, through the life of one person. And here is just a diagram of how those different policy objectives, which we are advocating, impact on different stages of life. From early years, skills development, preschool and during school, employment and work, and the whole of sustainable communities, the environment, a healthy standard of living through retirement. So what I will do is I'll give you a snapshot of the evidence around each one of those policy objectives. If you're interested, you can go back to our report and look at the detail. I will just give you a few examples of how we came to construct those policy objectives. They don't just come up of nothing, but there is evidence behind it. So give every child the best start in life. What this is inequalities in early cognitive development. The important thing about this graph is, if you look at the two bottom lines, you will see that children with low cognitive development but high socioeconomic status, by age 6, round about halfway through that graph, have overtaken those children who have extremely high cognitive development but come from low socioeconomic status. So once they've got into school and passed the first year of school, the socioeconomic status has set in as the biggest determinant of cognitive development. While at the same time, children of low socioeconomic status with a very high cognitive development at 22 months have lagged, have fallen behind those children from a high socioeconomic status. This is the distribution of the expenditure by education expenditure by age group. And as you can see, proportionally, the expenditure is much, much higher post-16, so post-compulsory education. To a certain extent, this is reasonable because we do know it is more expensive to educate older people that require more complex skills and facilities. But we need to ask ourselves so whether the balance is right. And whether it is more equitable to invest so many resources in post-compulsory education rather than the education that everyone is exposed to, all classes are exposed to compulsory education. So yeah, it is in a way an ethical question, and actually Danny Dorling in his latest book on injustice and why social inequalities persist talks quite a lot about the investment in education and the different investment in post-compulsory and post-compulsory education, and asks the question whether this is ethically right. However, one point that I would like to make is that I think the local authorities have a great role in filling this gap until expenditure changes, until national government makes a different decision about how this proportion should be distributed. I think local authorities could play a really strong role in filling this gap, both in the very early years in terms of play areas, library facilities, sports facilities, all sorts of resources that the local authority can provide to fill that gap